Okay, before we jump in, let's set the stage for what is honestly one of the most intense and psychologically gripping parts of the text. We're looking at a story with a massive, literally life and death contrast between rising success on one hand and a really dark, descending paranoia on the other. This specific chapter is just packed with incredible interpersonal drama, some brilliant and frankly pretty devious political maneuvering, and profound life lessons that still absolutely resonate with us today.
Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Prophet Samuel 1, chapter 18 in a clear and simple way, step by step.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, the context of chapter 18. Second, Jonathan and David's covenant. Third, Saul's fear of David. Fourth, the marriage snare. Then, practical life lessons. And finally, a short chapter recap.
Section 1. Context of chapter 18, the aftermath of victory. So right off the bat, we are in the immediate aftermath of a massive military victory against the Philistines. The literal dust of the battlefield has just cleared. But as we'll see, a new, quieter, and honestly far more dangerous tension is emerging right inside the palace walls. The text tells us in verse 2 that Saul makes a sweeping decree. From that day forward, David is to be kept permanently at the royal court. He completely refuses to let him return to his father's house. Think about how massive a life change that is. David is no longer just a shepherd boy running errands for his family. He's been drafted. He is now in full-time royal service, and from this moment on, his entire destiny is tied directly to the king. Section 2. Jonathan and David's covenant, a bond of true friendship.
Now, just as David is permanently brought into this royal household, something really beautiful happens. He makes an unexpected, incredibly profound connection with the one person who honestly stood to lose the absolute most from David's rising popularity. And that's King Saul's son, the crown prince, Jonathan. The text explicitly tells us, and Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Now, in its simplest sense, when we say covenant here, we're talking about a very serious, ironclad, binding promise of absolute mutual loyalty. Jonathan looks at David, sees his true character, and instead of viewing him as a political rival to the throne, he basically knits his soul to David's in pure, selfless friendship.
Verse 4 details the actual physical actions that seal this promise, and it's absolutely fascinating. Jonathan strips off his own royal robe and gives it to David, along with his tunic, his sword, his bow, and his belt. What's so crucial to understand here is the context of the ancient world. By handing over his personal weapons and his royal garments, Jonathan is visibly and effectively stripping himself of his royal succession. Giving your sword and belt to another warrior was the ultimate symbol of submission, respect, and equality. He is visibly elevating David out of deep, profound affection, basically saying, "I support you no matter what."
Section 3. Saul's fear of David. Success breeds paranoia.
While Jonathan responds to David's rise with love, King Saul has a completely different reaction. We start to see a really sharp contrast here. On one side, we have David's reality. Whatever Saul sends him out to do, he does it successfully. He acts incredibly wisely in all his campaigns, and as a result, he is deeply loved by all the people of Israel and Judah. Everyone is celebrating him. But then, on the other side, we have Saul's reality. Instead of being thrilled, he should be happy he has such a capable commander defending his kingdom, right? Saul watches this rapid rise and becomes completely consumed by a growing, dark, isolating paranoia. It's a striking dynamic. David's popularity increases in exact proportion to Saul's fear and jealousy.
We see this tragedy stated so plainly and powerfully in verse 15. When Saul saw how successful he was afraid of him. It's incredibly sad when you really think about it. The very success that Saul desperately needed to protect his nation from the Philistines became the direct source of his own personal terror. David wasn't doing anything wrong. In fact, his absolute competence and loyalty only served to highlight Saul's deepest insecurities about his own kingship.
Section 4. The marriage snare, political tension, and hidden motives.
So Saul is stuck. He realizes he cannot openly strike down a beloved national hero without causing a massive uprising among the people. So, what does he do? He resorts to weaponizing his own family. Let's methodically step through verses 17 to 19. In his first plot, Saul offers his older daughter Merab to David in marriage. Sounds like an honor, right? But there's a condition. David must continue to fight the battles of the Lord. Saul's hidden motive here is completely malicious. He's thinking, let the Philistines do it. It's a cowardly, calculated strategy to get the enemy to do his dirty work for him, so his own hands look clean. Ultimately, though, this specific plot fizzles out because Saul, in a really erratic move, abruptly gives Merab to another man named Adriel instead.
But before that arrangement falls apart, David's response in verse 18 is incredibly revealing about his character. He asks Saul, "Who am I, and what is my family or my father's clan in Israel that I should become the king's son-in-law?" Look at that. He genuinely views himself as unworthy of marrying into the royal family. Despite his massive military success, the fame, the adoration of the entire nation, he doesn't act entitled at all. His profound humility remains fully intact.
Moving into verses 20 and 21, a new opportunity arises for the king. Saul learns that his other daughter, Michal, is actually deeply in love with David. Now the text says Saul was pleased by this, not because he's happy for his daughter, but because he immediately sees how to use her as a deadly snare. He has his attendants secretly whisper to David in private, saying, "Look, the king is really pleased with you. Everyone loves you. Now is the time to become his son-in-law." Saul is deliberately manipulating the situation, setting a second, much more calculated trap.
When David predictably objects again, saying he's just a poor man and can't possibly afford to marry a princess, Saul plays his master stroke. He tells his servants to go back and say the king actually wants no money. Instead, he sets a very unique bride price. Now you have to understand, in ancient times, the bride price was the completely standard customary payment a groom made to a bride's family to secure the marriage. But Saul takes this normal cultural practice and deliberately twists it into an impossible, lethal military task.
Saul demands exactly 100 Philistine foreskins. Just take a second to process the sheer scale of that number. This wasn't a request for a minor skirmish or a quick border patrol. Saul is demanding that David, essentially with a target on his back, march right into the heart of enemy territory and personally strike down 100 enemy soldiers. The text explicitly tells us that Saul's absolute intent here was for David to fall by the hands of the Philistines. It was a literal suicide mission, cleverly disguised as an honorable royal dowry. But incredibly, if we look at verses 26 and 27, David doesn't just meet the king's quota, he and his men go out, and David strikes down 200 Philistines. He literally doubles the demand and brings the full number back to the king before the time even elapses. Talk about over-delivering. Saul's malicious plan completely backfires on him. Because of this overwhelming, unexpected success, the trap fails entirely, and Saul basically has no choice left but to publicly give David his daughter Michal in marriage.
And this brings us to the really tragic conclusion of the chapter's narrative in verses 28 and 29. Saul is forced to realize two undeniable things. The Lord is clearly with David, and his own daughter Michal truly loves David. And what is the result of that realization? The text says, Saul became still more afraid of him, and he remained his enemy for the rest of his days. David's continued flawless success didn't win Saul over. It cemented Saul's permanent lifelong enmity and hatred.
Section 5. Practical Life Lessons. Wisdom from Chapter 18. Now that we've walked through the narrative, let's consider a few practical points for our own self-improvement, based on the characters we just studied. First, looking at Saul, we clearly see the destructive trap of letting jealousy guide your actions. Constantly comparing himself to David literally robs Saul of his joy, his peace, and ultimately his rationality. Second, from Jonathan, we see the immense, life-changing value of true, selfless friendship. Choosing love and loyalty over personal ambition and striving to be a Jonathan to someone else is such a profound trait to cultivate. And finally, from David, we learn the absolute importance of maintaining deep humility even during rapid, overwhelming success. He never let the fame get to his head.
Section 6. Short Chapter Recap. Reviewing the Narrative Arc.
Let's quickly trace the flow of Chapter 18 so it sticks with you. It begins right after the battle, where David is retained at court permanently. Immediately, we see the beautiful covenant where Jonathan pledges loyal friendship and literally gives David his royal armor. Then, the core tension of the chapter builds. David succeeds in everything he does, while Saul grows increasingly fearful and paranoid. This leads to the trap, where Saul demands an impossible, lethal bride price of 100 Philistines. And finally, the result. David miraculously delivers 200, surviving the trap and marrying Michal, but permanently sealing Saul's hatred.
As we look back at everything that unfolded in this incredible text, from the heights of immense military success to the depths of the intense, completely unjustified hatred that David had to face, it really forces us to reflect on our own lives. How do we handle extreme, shifting dynamics like that?
I want to leave you with this final, profound question to think about. How does one maintain humility and wisdom when facing both immense success and intense hatred at the exact same time, just as David did? Let that hang in the air as your major takeaway today. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.